This video is to give you an overview of the standards that we'll be using in this course to teach language arts. And I want to begin with a story. This teacher's name is Amy Martin. She's one of our mentor teachers in Topeka. And her first year of teaching, she got a job teaching third grade at Meadows Elementary in Topeka. And she had a successful year, made it all the way through the year. Over the summer, thought she'd be coming back to teach third grade again, and found out at the last minute that she had to change to fourth grade. And when I say last minute, I mean just a couple of days before school started. There were not enough third graders and too many fourth graders. So because she was the new teacher in the group, she was asked to move to another grade level, and she was in a panic. She had prepared for third grade for the past year and wasn't really sure what she would be doing in fourth grade, what kind of content she would be covering, what she would be teaching. And so Amy's first step was to go to the standards. The standards really serve as a guide for what you'll be teaching. And I know you've had some introductions to the standards, and so I'm not going to start from scratch, but I'm really going to focus on the standards that relate to language arts so that you're familiar with those. And while we're working through the standards, kind of keep Amy in the back of your mind and how she used those standards really as an anchor to hold on to help her better understand what the curriculum was to be in fourth grade, what she was expected to teach. And that's really the purpose of standards, is that guide for what to teach. So in Kansas, we have the Kansas College and Career Ready Standards. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the Common Core standards. Those standards were developed at a national level. They were developed by a consortium of educators, and each individual state has the choice of whether they want to use those standards as their core or not. In Kansas, our State Board of Education decided in 2010 that they would adopt the Common Core standards as our core. But those aren't our standards in Kansas. Those Common Core standards were taken as the core, and then we have actually added to those to make them fit our state. And so in Kansas, we call them the Kansas College and Career Ready Standards. But I want you to know that behind the scenes, the Common Core standards are the core of the Kansas College and Career Ready Standards. So they're not exactly the same, but they're very close. So within both, within the Common Core and the Kansas standards, there are four main areas in the English Language Arts standard. So you should be familiar with that term, English Language Arts. You'll often see it abbreviated ELA. Those are the overarching standards that we're focusing on in our language arts course. But because you have another course devoted to reading, we won't be looking at the reading standards. We'll just be looking at the writing, speaking, listening, language standards, and also new this past fall, we now have Kansas handwriting standards. Those actually were just passed in, I think in December of 2013. So we'll take a look at those. So when you're working with the standards, I have put a link that will take you directly to the standards in our Blackboard course over on the left-hand side. But for now, I'm going to go to the standards through this way. So this takes us to the KSTE website, and you see a list here of the standards by grade level or overall the standards. So this would be the Kansas College and Career Ready Standards for grades K through 12. And I'm going to explain this Kansas 15% here in just a few minutes. So I'm sharing this information because with this video is an accompanying activity of a standard scavenger hunt. And you're going to only be focusing on the English Language Arts standards that apply to our class in this scavenger hunt. Here's where I want you to go to find these standards. You'll have this same link in Blackboard. If you look on the left-hand side in Blackboard, there's a link that links to this same page. And now you can get to the grade level standards that you need, because I do want you to be looking at the grade level standards specific to the grade that you're in right now. Okay, so let's come back to our PowerPoint. And down here I have the Kansas handwriting standards. They're in a different place. So I have the link for that. And Those standards are here. They're a fairly short document, and you'll be able to scroll through those standards when it comes time to look at those. And you'll just scroll down and you'll get to down here where you'll see the handwriting standards by grade level. So we're going to come back to these, but I want to show you where they are. Again, the link for the handwriting standards you can also find in Blackboard. So that's the overall structure for the standards. Let's come back to this. I told you I would explain the Kansas 15. So the Common Core standards are the core of our Kansas standards, but each state can have the option to add a few more standards. Up to 15% of the total content can be specific to that state. So when you look at the Kansas standards, you'll see some of the standards have little sunflowers by them, like these here. That means that's a standard that is unique to Kansas. That's that extra Kansas 15. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to go back to the link here for the standards, and you see here are the standards grades K through 12 with the Kansas 15%. That's the extra things that we have added here in Kansas that we believe apply to our students in the state. And you can see that no matter what version, these are just different versions of the standards. You can see that these all include the Kansas 15%, and you can figure out those items by looking for the sunflower. All right, now back to our standards. So for just the overarching anchor standards that we've added in Kansas, you can see here, not anything earth-shattering, but things that we think are important. One of the things that stands out here is the metacognitive strategies, having students think about their own thinking while they're learning literacy. And then the last one, technical education, is an emphasis here in the state of Kansas. So those are the ones that are unique to us. So let's come back to, okay, so we have this overarching. We're going to focus now on writing, speaking, listening, and language. Let me just give you an overview what to look for in the writing standards. The writing standards are broken up into 4 subtopics, and they deal with the text types, which are the same as they are for reading. So those text types are narrative, informational, and argumentative for writing, just like they are for reading. The writing standards also deal with the production and distribution of writing. So that's really the writing process, which you're going to be reading about in Chapter 9. And then research to build knowledge really deals with more of a technical or research kind of writing. And then the range of writing, encouraging students to be writing within these different text types or genres so that they're getting a lot of experience with different types of writing. So that's kind of the organization of the writing standards. Then we have speaking and listening standards, which are fairly new. We have had them in Kansas before, but nobody really knew about them, but they're receiving a lot more attention now. Well, these standards are organized around 2 big ideas. One is making sense of knowledge or information through listening, and the other is presenting that knowledge and information through speaking. So hopefully when I say this, you're thinking about the 6 areas of language arts and those 2 columns where we have the receptive modes and the expressive modes, because that's what these standards deal with. Expressive, the speaking, the presenting, and the listening or the comprehension, the taking in of information. And then our 3rd area in the ELA standards deals with language. And here's where you're going to run into grammar and vocabulary in this area of language. So the conventions of standard English, the things that we look for when we do editing, really center around this area. The parts of speech, the punctuation that we use when we're conveying an idea, plus developing our vocabulary. And then, of course, that 4th area for the English language arts that we're focusing on in our class is the area of handwriting. And when you look more closely at the handwriting standards, I want you to notice that those are broken up into 3 categories. The form and production, actually making the letters. Automaticity means can you make those letters with a nice smooth flow without stopping to have to think about each letter as you make them. And then can you then take that quality handwriting and use it in your daily work within the classroom. So that's how the handwriting standards are organized. So what I'm going to ask you to do is a scavenger hunt activity. You can find a copy of the scavenger hunt activity in Blackboard in the course contents area. And it's going to ask you to be delving into the standards. And like I said, I want you to focus on the standards for your grade level that you're at right now. I had intended for you to work with a partner at that same grade level, but you'll have to do this on your own this afternoon. And then the second part of that scavenger hunt actually asks you to look at, to pick a standard at your grade level, and then to go to the grade level below and above and find a similar standard and write that on the little chart. Now, if you're in kindergarten, of course, you can't go to the grade level below, but you can go to the grade level above. The purpose for that part of the scavenger hunt is to start getting you familiar with what children likely learned in the grade before and what they're going to be learning next as they leave your grade level. So that's a background on our standards, and that should get you going on the scavenger hunt.